Several weeks ago, we heard an allusion to the Ten Commandments when Jesus gave us the Beatitudes as a step beyond in terms of saying, he who hungers and thirsts for justice. He kept saying, blessed are you, blessed are you, blessed are you, referring to you because you have accepted, embraced the Ten Commandments. You might say by now you have the Ten Commandments under your belt, no pun intended, but that you have embraced them and you've embraced the Beatitudes. And in embracing them, you recognize that, yes, there might be suffering, hard decisions to make because of embracing those. And so then the week after, we heard not just that you are blessed, but last week, heard Jesus himself saying to you, you are light. You are light. God is light. But he says, you are light. You are light. You will make a difference in the world that so greatly needs your light. And again, today, almost bringing it full circle, we hear the first reading about the commandments. We hear the responsorial song. Again, you are blessed, reaffirming who we are and the dignity that is yours because you do have the wisdom to accept and embrace all that God asks of you. And now Jesus, as that Son of God, again, calls us beyond just the externals of the Ten Commandments. Today, he speaks about two in particular. And since he speaks about the sixth commandment, it might be a good time to address it because it seems like these past several weeks, it's like every day something draws your mind to sexual sins and sexual problems. But these last couple weeks in particular, within 2 weeks, I had 4 different occasions brought to me of young girls who are sexually involved and pregnant now as a young girl. One of them is my niece. And it's like, does the guy love her? Absolutely not. I thank God they broke up even before she knew she was pregnant. But many are being used and abused these days. Then last week we had Super Bowl, guys, like it or not. Super Bowl, as with sports in general, is there to build testosterone, Yeah, get out there. And doing so, what do we find with it? There's a national sting for the last 5 years across country, but several big cities particularly. This year they netted over 800 sex offenders, people who were selling sex in one way or the other. They rescued 6 young girls and a good number of women who had been taken into the sex trade. And so it grabs my attention because Thursday we celebrated the feast of St. Josephine Bakita, who is a patron of those who have been in sex trafficking. The young girl from Africa sold into slavery and eventually joined the convent in Italy. So on one hand, we're seeing so much in that regard. And then on the other hand, what do we find? This coming week, I'm sure some of you ladies and men pay attention. The 14th is Valentine's Day. That's St. Valentine, another saint. And we look at, wow, love is wonderful. Marriage is super. God created marriage. God chose to use marriage as the sign of his love for us. In other words, that's how important marriage is to us. He who created male and female. He is he who made our sexual powers and therefore has a real say over how they are to be used. So we're looking at these two things. We look at St. Valentine and we think of love is what? Love is willing, a desire to serve the other. St. Valentine, as you know, supposedly gave a great dowry to help young girls pay a dowry so they could get married. Is a willingness and a desire to seek what is absolutely best for the other. If it's not that, it's not love. Not the love that God calls us to. So on the one side, we're looking at just lately, the United Nations Children's Agency, UNICEF, estimates that there are 1.8 million children who are trafficked into sex trade every year. 1.8 million children. And this does not include cyber sex. For example, the Philippines, this past year, said that there were over 2,000 referrals a month into the Philippines, mostly from America. Why? Because of internet today, something they didn't have in our Lord's day. But with internet, sex is available anywhere, and with that, there's cheap shows, I guess, if you're from the Philippines. And so we think, wow. We look at Australia. This past week, the news out of Australia. How many priests there Unbelievable number supposedly are accused of sexual sins. I lived through the 60s where actually the seminary was a place of refuge for perverts in many ways, in both kinds, as a way of also escaping Vietnam, as a place of refuge. And that applies to all seminaries, not just Catholic seminary. You got an exemption if you went into the seminary, and some end up staying. It's like, well, this is a good life, and unfortunately we didn't have powers to vet maybe as much as we needed to at that time. And so that we are called to continue to deal with this escalating problem in our day. We're saying, how are we called to be a light? Each one of us must be in some way or other. And yet, the reality is God made us sexual. Somebody once said, was asking, how often do men have sexual temptations? And he said, about every 6 seconds. So, if you would think that's an overestimate, I don't know. But I do know that one time there was a young seminarian, he was talking to an older priest about, Father, how long will I have to be a priest before these temptations disappear? And he said, well, I hate to tell you, but when you're 6 foot under for 6 months, they'll go away. So to make it real that yes, this is part of who we are. All of us have to deal with it. American Family Association recently said it should come as no surprise that many couples experience sexual dysfunction once married. So by the time a man and woman enter into marriage, there's a good chance that at least one of them has experienced premarital sex, pornography, or childhood sexual abuse. These are like bombs with a delayed fuse, and these wounds will often detonate in the marriage itself, leaving both spouses and their marriage in need of rehabilitation. Regardless of one's gender, every person's sexuality is woundable from cradle to grave. Some wounds, like abuse, occur without the victim's solicitation or permission, and they need to know that. Other wounds, like premarital sex or viewing pornography, these require some consent. But whatever the case, in a fallen world that is increasingly perverse, few can expect to enter marriage without sexual wounds or find a mate who is sexually whole. If we want to see things change, if we want to be the light of the world that our Lord calls us to, if we want to truly honor St. Valentine, then we must be willing to make the changes necessary in our lives and in our community. First of all, to love is, as we say, to serve the other. To seek marriage is to desire, to always want what is best for the other. And as such, we must see ourselves and see others truly as a mother, as our sister, as our daughter. You say, is this something I would want them to be doing? Whether it's involved in regular movies, like right now, what do we see? 50 Shades of Grey came out. Who went to see that? Huh? Well, now 50 Shades Darker is out. It's like, no, please don't go see that. Yeah. That's how we help increase this kind of thing, by supporting the industries that use people, that use our sexuality in a way not intended by God. And you and I have choices to make. The first reading today said, God lays before us life or death, good or evil. And daily we make choices by what we have on our own TV at home. Some probably think, well, there's nothing wrong with this. Well, is it something, again, that you would want your daughter doing? If not, then why are we watching it? Some say, well, this is not for children, so I protect my children from certain things. But sometimes you have to say, it's not for children. What makes you think it's for adults? It's not good enough for them. How is it good enough for us? So we have that responsibility. Maybe sometimes you can go beyond what some might call acceptable or normal. With pornography, growing events of it, Jesus didn't deal with pornography. We look at Bathsheba. Okay, she was taking a bath on the roof, and King David, invited her to his apartment, and we look at others, the story of Susanna. But overall, no, not like you and I have been exposed to. Pray for Hugh Hefner. Maybe he found real love. He's one of the great pioneers in destroying women, seeing women as objects, Nobody ought to be objectified. Nobody ought ever to be seen as a thing. And that's exactly what pornography does. Christopher West, you've had any exposure to him, is probably the best author and speaker to translate into our language Pope John Paul's theology of the body. But in there, he speaks about like pornography, and he says, girls, if you're dating some guy, and it's not only applies to girls, like guys, some friend invites you over to their house, and they're involved in pornography. He says, run, don't walk, run. Get out of that relationship fast. And if you want to date somebody like that, let them know they must be clean at least 6 months and be getting help. Because there is no cure. Just like it took us forever, it seems like, to discover these priests who were pedophiles. There's no cure. There's no cure. And so you have to take appropriate action to keep them away. Those who are involved in pornography, especially if it involves children, there is no cure. Jesus today said, I tell you, anyone who has lust in his heart has already committed adultery. Anybody who is involved in pornography and already has lust in their heart for others or for children, already guilty of being a child molester and participating in that industry. Run from those relationships. And if you are in a relationship that involves pornography, do all you can to make sure your spouse gets the help. And I say spouse, not men. Women are getting more and more also into pornography. Men or women, make sure your spouse, out of love for them, gets the help to find healing. And by healing, you and I can perhaps become the light in the world that we're called to be. For Jesus says, you are the light of the world. It may require some difficult decisions on our part in this sex-charged world, but it is worth doing. Accept your responsibility to make the changes you can in your own life and in your community.